Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Z from Vault, and in this video I'll be talking through how you can rank your dental practice on the first page of Google. I'll be talking through my entire step-by-step process that I take to rank dentists in Sydney on the first page of Google, and you'll be able to follow along because I'm actually going to choose a random dental clinic that's based in Sydney, and I'll be auditing their site and walking you through the exact steps that I would take to rank it on the first page. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so jumping into Hrefs here, I've just done a search for the keyword that we'd like to rank for. In this case, we'll focus on emergency dentist in Ryde. Now, if you're not familiar with this suburb, we'll just jump into Google Maps here. We can see that Ryde is based sort of in the northern suburbs of Sydney, roughly about 20-25 minutes from the CBD. So this is what we'll focus on, emergency dentist in Ryde. Now I have chosen a business that's ranking on about page 2, so towards the bottom of page 2, number 18. So I've chosen putneydentalcare.com.au, and there's actually a reason why I've chosen this particular site, and that's because they have a very clear case of search intent mismatch. What we see here is it looks like they're targeting the keyword emergency dentist Sydney. Now, if we scroll down, actually before we even scroll down, we can see here that the service areas that they focus on is Ryde, Gladesville, Meadowbank, and West Ryde. And if we scroll down, we can see their location is in Putney, which is very, very close to sort of that Ryde area. So they're clearly servicing a radius around that, their physical location. The issue here is when you search for emergency dentist in Sydney, it's very clear that the search intent here is to find a dental clinic that's based in Sydney CBD. We can see that from the very first title here, they're based in Sydney CBD City. And as a secondary check, we can also see in the local pack, the top 3 results are all based in the CBD. So we've got Elizabeth Street, Pitt Street, Pitt Street. And then I've also had a look at all of these results here, and they're pretty much all based in or around Sydney CBD. We can see some of them even have it in their title that they're based in Sydney CBD. So in this case, there's a clear case of search intent mismatch. They should actually be targeting the keyword emergency dentist Ryde. And we can see in Hrefs here that despite the fact that they're focusing on Sydney, they're actually ranking relatively well for the keyword Ryde. Obviously, they're not ranking on the first page, so with a few tweaks and corrections, they can very well rank on the first page, possibly even the top 5 if they take the right course of action. So yeah, we'll be focusing on this site here. Now, the first thing we want to do is make sure that the keyword is placed in the most prominent locations. If we jump into the detailed SEO extension, now this is a free browser extension, just gives us a clear sort of visibility over the title tags, heading tags, that sort of stuff. Now, if we look in the title here, we can see that they have actually placed the keyword, which obviously we're going to correct to say emergency dentist Ryde. So we'll correct that there. In the meta description, you also want the primary keyword placed in there. So ideally, we'd replace this, we'd receive the best emergency dental care in Ryde. Now, with the phone number, I usually don't recommend placing this in the meta description because this can actually be detrimental to your organic CTR, which is an important ranking factor when it comes to sort of the signals that you're sending to Google. Now, if a lot of people see your site and they just call directly rather than clicking on it, that's telling Google that perhaps your site is not actually matching the intent for their search query. So we should actually take this out here and just replace this copy with something more along the lines of sort of, incentivizing the click, making sure that the person who reads this actually clicks onto your site and then takes an action from there. So just creating copy that's more sort of compelling and incentivizing that click onto your site. Now the URL we also want to make sure is correctly optimized for your target keyword. In this case, I would actually take this out, obviously depending on the technical possibilities of the site. This just sort of adds unnecessary text to your URL, and ideally we'd just take this out and put emergency dentist Ryde, and then you have a nice clean optimized URL structure. Jumping into the headings, we also want to make sure that the keyword is in the first H1, which looks like they have done. Again, we'll just replace this with Ryde. And then we also want a variant of that primary keyword in the H2. which again they actually do have. We just replace that with Ryde, and then perhaps take out Ryde and then just leave the other surrounding suburbs in that H2. And then the rest of it looks pretty well optimized and pretty well written. The other thing we want to focus on here is just the UX of the page. Before we dive into changing any content or really doing any sort of SEO, we want to make sure that the page experience is good. Firstly, that the user spends a bit of time on the page to indicate to Google that this is the right page that they're looking for, to have really well written content and some really clear CTAs, so you can actually start to get leads through as well. Now, if we have a look through this page, it's decent enough. The only sort of thing I'd point out here is that it seems to be a little bit text heavy, and not enough images to break it up, and perhaps some of this content could actually be condensed a little bit if it's not easily readable or easily skimmable. And if it is a little bit repetitive, then we just want to take it out and make sure that, you know, our copy is very compelling and gives the user exactly what they need. So this sort of stuff is really good, to have lists and break it up and make it really clear. You know, what's considered a dental emergency. It's very likely something that the user would be too keen to read about. And then just as we scroll down here, we can see this image is a little bit too oversized. The quality isn't great. And actually it looks more sort of focused on wisdom teeth. So at the very least, I'd correct the sizing of this image and perhaps put something a little bit more relevant to this page. Now, as we scroll down, we can see they've got their address and their actual physical location here. And then they've got the call to action here. So in terms of improvements to this particular design, obviously the most obvious thing it's lacking is the actual lead form. Usually you'd want that within the page. Now I can see that they do have a book online button, which would obviously go towards the booking page. And yeah, usually you'd want that within the page just to improve that conversion time. That's good that they've got the call button clickable, and then also that looks like it's going to the same website, so the same booking form, so you probably don't want to double up too much on that right next to each other. But from a design perspective, it doesn't look too bad. Now the next thing we'll do is jump into the site loading speed. Now I've just opened up PageSpeed Insights, which we use to test the loading speed of this particular page here. So what I've done is I've just put in the URL for this page, and we'll just click Analyze here. And whilst that's running, I'm just going to jump into Surfer, and we're going to look at the on-page optimization and to uncover any quick wins that we can take from this. So when we look at the content score, this is just an overall comparison of how well the page is optimized for the keyword emergency dentist Ryde. Obviously, we're comparing it against the top 10 competitors here. Now, what we see here is that this page actually isn't optimized too poorly, despite the fact that it seems to be targeting Sydney. What we see is it's in the general vicinity of these top competitors. We're ranking number 17 for this keyword, but when we look at these top 10 competitors, our score is not too far away. There's obviously room for improvement here. We do want to be more in this range here. We want to try and aim for a score that's at least the same or higher than the top competitor, which in this case would be number 3 here. They've got a score of 68. So yeah, there's definitely some room for improvement here. Now, as we scroll down, this section here is very important because this is what refers to NLP, which is how well Google crawlers can understand what the content is about. And actually here as well, we can see that it's not doing too badly. Most of the terms and densities are meeting the minimum requirements here. We can see this first one here, there's room for improvement. So dental emergency, we can inject that a few more times. Emergency dental treatment. So we'd have a look through this more in detail, and obviously would use a nuanced approach just to work out which phrases make sense and which ones don't, and just try and improve this a little bit more here. When we look at the word count, this is an area that we can correct a little bit. We can see here that they're significantly higher than the top 10 competitors. So ideally, firstly, what this tells us is that it is a little bit over optimized. We want to reduce this word count a little bit just so it's more in this sort of range. And these are all estimates. I mean, Surf has come up with a very specific count. This doesn't necessarily mean that the website won't rank if it's higher or lower. But as a general rule, we want to be somewhere in the vicinity of the competitors. We can see we are well above the average here. So personally, I would reduce this word count and take out anything that's a little bit too repetitive or irrelevant from the page, just so it's more in line with the competitors. This area here, this is really just due to the search intent mismatch. They don't actually have the keyword Ryde, so they're using emergency dentist Sydney. We want to have emergency dentist Ryde within the title. We want to mention it a couple more times in the body, and then definitely in the H1 tag. So just these three alone will significantly improve their score there. And then as we scroll down, we can see here that the loading speed is a little bit slower. We'll jump into the PageSpeed Insights report in a second as well. But we can see here there is some room for improvement there. And other than that, that's pretty much what we'd focus on from the Surfer report. So we have some quick win opportunities here from an on-page perspective that we can use to drive up the score. Now, if we jump into PageSpeed Insights, looks like this is still loading. But the Core Web Vitals assessment for desktop has passed. Mobile has failed. This is fairly typical for dental clinic sites. Desktop is a lot easier to be able to get a good score in. So mobile, usually that is where the larger percentage of traffic would come from. And this is something we can verify with Google Analytics data. But personally, I would focus more on the mobile landing page because any improvements you make there will also translate into desktop improvements as well. So yeah, I'll definitely try and improve this. Now, when we come back onto the site here, one thing I want to look at here is the on-page schema markup, because they do have the address mentioned here. They've got their phone number as well, so we want to make sure that this is correctly marked up. And one thing I want to quickly point out here is that this number looks like it's clickable, but it's not clear enough to the user that this can be clicked on to call. And same with the email address. You can click on it, but which is fine, but it does need to be clearer that this is clickable, especially on mobile where you don't have the cursor. So similar to here, where the number is a different color, you want to make sure that you're highlighting the fact that it is a link. So yeah, that's just a minor thing, but it's important from a UX perspective. Now, I'm going to use the detailed SEO extension here again, just to look at the schema markup. And what we're looking for here is to see that there is location markup. And we can see here they've got FAQ, they've got images, they've got the organization, but yeah, they don't have location markup. So there's another opportunity that they can use to improve this page, to mark it up. So, often cases when you do search for emergency dentist Ryde, we may see that some competitors actually have their location appearing in the bottom of the search result. Not always, but it's important to have it in there just in case it does appear. It can give you a little bit of an edge with competition. So just using the correct markup is very important for this page. And other than that, the page looks okay. They've got social media markup there as well, so no issues there. Now, the final step of this process would be to look at what off-page opportunities we have. At this point, we've already done the technical optimization. We've looked at the keyword placements, we've looked at the on-page optimization, and we've done a general analysis of the website and have optimized everything to a point where we can be confident that the on-page experience is really good and that the content is correctly matching the search intent. And we're going to be looking at the off-page as the final step of this process. And that's important to mention because we're not jumping right into link building or building citations, because quite often when you do work on the on-page elements first, you can drive some significant improvements. And we want the link building to be the final step because that is really what's going to drive this performance to the next level. Now, I'm just looking at this keyword again, emergency dentist Ryde, and we're going to look at the competition here. And what we see, if we look at just the top 10, we can see that the average sort of domain rating is quite weak. There's no overly strong competitors here. The strongest one has a DR of 16. So what this tells us is that there is definite room for improvement to be able to rank in the first page here. link building will not be a massive part of our campaign. We'll be focusing that elsewhere. But it is important to note that to build up your domain rating, you do need to build some quality and relevant backlinks. But this is a very, very positive sign, because there's definitely sites in here that have very weak domain ratings and they are ranking in the top 10. Now, if you look at the actual backlinks pointing to each of these URLs, the most any of these sites have is 1. So really what this tells us is that all we need to do is build 1 or 2 at the most. If we can build a really high quality and relevant link, we should definitely be able to meet the benchmark, certainly from an off-page perspective, to be able to rank for this. Now, there's obviously other things we can do from a local SEO perspective in terms of building local citations. There's definitely merit to that. But to be able to rank in the organic listings, I'm not talking about the local pack, we should definitely be able to improve performance here. So really all we'll be looking to do is to build one solid backlink to begin with, and then see how we go from there. Now, when we deciding on what sort of link we want to build, there's various ways we can go about it. The quickest way would be to look at the link profiles of these sites to see what sort of sources they've acquired their backlinks from. Obviously, there's not too many here that have more than one backlink, but certainly we can go through these top 20 or 30 competitors and look at their links and see where we can find opportunities. We don't want to copy links that aren't good, coming from good sources, obviously, but if we do find one that is relevant and high quality, we try and acquire it as well. Now, that's obviously the quickest way to do it. There's other ways we can do manual research as well and find opportunities. So I won't dive too much into that, but what we do see here is that there's very minimal need for link building. All right, that sums up the steps that I would take to rank this particular site for the top 10 results in Google. I hope that you've been able to take some tips and tricks that you can apply to your own dental clinic's website. Now, if you do have any questions or if you need help with your SEO, please reach out, and I hope this video was helpful. Thank you.